And we're live. Yes, and back at it again. Back again, yo. We couldn't be ashy, yo, because like the cousins, they would definitely be after they were doing like wave checks and everything.
Hey, there are no ashy hands in the building right now.
Not at all.
Oh my god.
That would be very, very flagrant to have that. All right, so again, we're going through this issue of not seeing like the chat. So is YouTube still hating? Like,
come on, YouTube.
What's going on here? Like,
they hating on us.
I thought they like us. I really thought that YouTube liked us. So I guess we'll find out soon.
Listen, ever since I've been in Seattle, they won't let the chat be great.
Oh wow.
They know I'm not there, man.
Oh well.
Is that what it is?
Then I'm sorry, sir, but
when's your flight now?
Yo, what time you fly out again?
Listen, just let us get through one more episode. We'll get right back to normal.
Too many iPhone minis in the building.
Hey, don't hate on them.
Don't do it to you.
Listen, I've been waiting on them to, it's real handy. It's light. You feel me? They keep the pinky ring, real intact. Cause that big old phone, man, I had one of them big phones. My pinky used to be swole up. I can't, but that's neither here nor
there. Okay. What's up, everybody? I'm Mark Monroe, and I am accompanied by the wonderful
Jolyn GC and the place to be.
And of course, we have a wonderful guest by the name of
it's Tevo, the come up cousin correspondent in the building.
There it is. So today it's all about, we're gonna talk about some pretty deep stuff here. Now, of course, we can't see any of y'all in the chat, so hopefully y'all can see us because clearly we can't see you, and we would love to do that, but apparently, again, YouTube is on one. So I guess we got Tevo here looking at, where we are in the chats. So once when that loads up, we'll know exactly who was the first one and where y'all coming from. So we would love that because we feed on that energy and we're all about that. So
but will it say the exact first person though? Or
I don't know because we actually had somebody last time who hit me up on Instagram.
They were like,
said that I was the first one. So
they wanted a shout out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and it just totally escaped my mind right now. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to do something special for you. So I'm gonna have to probably like shout you out in my Instagram or something like that. So that way, you can feel the love and the spirit of camaraderie. So
I feel bad too because somebody wanted like a birthday shout out, and now I just can't remember who it was. But if you are a come up cousin and your birthday was January 21st. Happy belated birthday, and I'm so sorry. Like
that'd be funny if there's like 50 people that have a birthday January 21st.
Happy birthday to all the January birthdays! Woo!
And pretty soon, I think we'll have an announcement at the very, very end, so that way, essentially, just
do we have an announcement?
Don't worry. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. That's splat. Shout out to that kid. All right, y'all. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of kind of like everything. Now, of course, Jolyn always comes in with the heat, and so she's still. Oh, okay. Well,
are we ready to take it away?
Oh, well, I mean, clearly, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, so that way you can check out. The subscribe button. The subscribe button.
Subscribe button. What was that?
Oh, we didn't like that?
It just kind of threw me off.
I was checking different voices.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, wow.
But we is almost at 50K, so if that's what it takes to get the 50K.
Wow. Yo, you guys just won't let me be great. Okay. All right, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. And then on top of that, if you like the content, if you like what we do, go ahead and hit that like button. So that way we can bring more cousins from distant places into this arena. So that way we can all just like get ready for this cookout. And then on top of that, if you want to be in the know, so that way it's like whenever that cookout is happening, that bell, go ahead and hit that. And then that makes you pretty much in the know. You're part of the Cool Kids Club. So definitely thank you, each and every single one of you, for joining us. Today is January 28th.
Yes.
And on top of that, I hand it over to the wonderful Jolyn GC.
Hey, yo, I'm about to be a little more amped because,
today's that day.
Man, there's so much heat. There's so much heat to talk about. What's up, everyone? It's Jolyn GC, the place to be, and it is Hot Take Thursday, and we are definitely coming in hot, so get ready for the shade. Mark has his shades on deck.
Ready to go.
We got do-rags here, and you know the bonnet gang, time doesn't start until the evening hours, so no bonnet, okay? Now, let's get into this market, y'all. Okay, so we had some rebounds. The Dow was up 300.19 points. S&P 500 was up 36.61 points, and NASDAQ was up 66.56 points. Now, getting over to sector performance, you know, there are 11 sectors. We track the top 3 and we track the bottom 3. So what's interesting about all of these today, every one of them was in the green. So we had financials, materials, and industrials leading the pack at the top. And then the bottom 3, they were green, but they were still in the bottom. We got tech, consumer discretionary, and real estate. Now for our pick performance, y'all can find the existing picks as they exist in this moment by going to our Instagram page at That Come Up Series. You scroll through and you will find all of our 31 SIPs. So out of those 31, we track the top 3 and we track the bottom 3. So for the top 3, we got Adobe, AMD, and ARKK. And then for the bottoms, we got XLY, Z, and Zscaler. So that's Zillow and Zscaler.
Wait, those were the top 3? Like
the bottom 3.
Oh, okay. I was like, the bottom 3 was AMD.
No. AMD was in the top. Top 3, Adobe, AMD, ARKK.
That's interesting. Because wasn't AMD negative for the day?
I mean,
I could have sworn it was like SMH.
Oh my gosh,
I was like, yo, are we running away from SMH today? Because yo.
No, my settings got switched up.
Oh no. Well, it's okay. I mean, you know.
Okay.
Our chat just came back. So
yeah, that's a fact.
Hey
okay,
people.
I'm sorry guys.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Now, okay, so scratch all that pick performance. You can still go to the top. But the pick performance. So number 1 is Square. Number 2 is Disney. And number 3 was DocuSign. Now, for the bottom, we got Facebook, Hack, and Tesla. Those are the bottom. AMD did, AMD. Yeah, AMD was in the bottom, like closer to the bottom half. But you know, they preheating right now. They gonna start cooking.
I'm ready for it.
They will.
Keep them in the oven.
Well, before we get going, I mean, we would be remiss also if we didn't mention this. I would like to send a special, prayer up and just my thoughts to the family of Cicely Tyson. She is no longer with us. She has passed at the age of 94. So, I mean, shout outs to you, Queen, because you trailblaze a vast portion. And without you, I mean, honestly, we wouldn't see the caliber of actresses and other actors, as well as other folks within entertainment, as well as within the arts itself. So, 100% respect. And, let's just have a small moment of silence for Sister Cicely Tyson. Thank you. And by the way, correction, she passed away at the age of 96.
Legend right there.
All right. So today, the title is all about, something. And so we've been going through this document called Big Ideas. And we're going to get into a little bit of the hot takes. So if you want, actually, should we go through the hot takes today? Or do you want me to just get
I want to say the hot takes for the end.
Oh, she's trying to bring the fire. So I will save these. Shout out to the shady side out.
Those ready.
I will, definitely go into some learning. So are we ready? Because we're going to go into 2 different subjects today. So we're going to go into electric vehicles and we're going to talk about deep learning. Yes. So
let's do it.
Whew,
all right. Pretty leisurely to me.
Oh, well, okay. All right. So let's get into it. So for those of you that didn't know, ARK Invests or ARK Funds released their big ideas for 2021. And we are huge fans of ARK. So we wanted to go ahead and pretty much go through and dissect the report and give you a little bit more clarification. Now, of course, for me, I live my life within, artificial intelligence, investing in startups, as well as I love, publicly traded companies that are within AI. And then on top of that, just kind of giving you a quick glimpse to just dissect what they wrote in what they've done in their report, just to give you a little bit more subject matter. And then on top of that, we're going to go into the EV space as well. So let's get to it. All right. So I think everybody can see this. So let's go. All right. So let's start off deep learning. Well, when we think about it, it's like, of course, we started off, if you journey back to artificial intelligence days, it was just like a simple, if you look at any computer, it operates off of ones and zeros. So it's pretty much everything that's done is done in a form of a 1 or a 0. Now, of course, fast forward, there's calculations, algorithms, and everything else that really created the infrastructure of what we know as artificial intelligence, AI. And now we're moving into this place where we're going beyond, we're building upon AI we went from machine learning, which was pretty much over time, it is able to learn from either its mistakes or from different data sets and then ultimately make suggestions. And now we're getting into this thing called deep learning. So let's just dive into it. So deep learning could be the most important software breakthrough of our time. Until recently, humans programmed all software. Deep learning, a form of artificial intelligence, so there's a few forms of it, machine learning, one of them as well, uses data to write software. By automating the creation of software, deep learning could turbocharge every industry. So I know I just said a lot there, and well, I know I just read a lot there, and that came from the folks at ARC. So let's just break this down a little bit. So when you think about deep learning, imagine this: programs writing programs.
Mm-hmm. That sounds kind of scary, Mark. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, depends upon how it's orchestrated. I mean, there are some biases that have been written in AI, like for example Google, where we'll get into that. Yeah. But according to their research, they believe that deep learning will add 30 trillion to the global equity market capitalization during the next 15 to 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. So like, for example, to put it into perspective, you have a few $1 trillion companies that are on the publicly traded market. You have Apple, that's at 2. You have Facebook is not there, but you have Microsoft, you have Amazon, and I'm probably sure Google is not that far to follow. That's 4 companies, and who knows, Tesla could also be there as well. So when we look at it, we see 4 major companies that are $1 trillion companies. So if we think about it, $30 trillion to the global equity market cap, just imagine how many other $1 trillion companies will exist.
Right, there's room.
I mean, there's always room at the table. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So when we think about deep learning, think about it like software 2.0. So in software 1.0, that was code that was written by pretty much people like us, like people. So back in the 1970s, you had your companies like Microsoft, Oracle, and SAP. I mean, the days back when they all wore, blazers to work.
I remember those days.
Yeah, the early days of Silicon Valley.
Well, they were court days for me, but I feel like you're saying.
In the 70s?
No, I mean, I'm just saying when it was my time.
Oh, okay. And then in the 80s, when we had programming made software reusable and increased its scale and capability dramatically. And then we came up to the 2000s, the internet democratized software, growing the market from millions to billions of people. And then we had in 2012, deep neural networks won the ImageNet challenge, marking the beginning of deep learning, or the software 2.0 era. So putting that into perspective, we went from having just basics, C++ software, to then having stuff like Java, Ruby on Rails, and then ultimately making the coding more, a lot of mumbo jumbo, but pretty much the code got better and the code became more and more agnostic, to the point where honestly, now it's able to be recognized on multiple different platforms. So that's pretty cool. So then let's fast forward to that cutoff time of 2015, where we really reached a significant scale and where the industry started significantly changing. So in 2020, deep learning powered almost all large-scale internet services, including search, social media, and video recommendations. So when you think about it, when you look at Google search, that's powered by AI. Mm-hmm. When you think about like even the videos that you watch on Facebook or any of those services, that's powered by artificial intelligence and deep learning. When you think about, say, for example, video recommendations on TikTok, that's also powered by deep learning. And so what they're thinking is over the next decade, they believe that most of the important software will be created by deep learning, enabling, say, for example, self-driving cars, accelerated drug discovery, and more. So just imagine, say, for example, if you have programs that are able to write on top of each other and essentially be able to scale things a lot faster. So imagine like the type of decision making that, say, for example, these neural networks will be able to do. Like, for example, robo-taxis.
Right.
Or let's look at, say, for example, finding the next, I don't know, I mean, the next cure for cancer. You know, using artificial intelligence to do that.
How does quick question?
Yeah.
Within the context of deep learning, and it being able to, for instance, discover drugs ahead of time, what does that look like in a pandemic? Are we saying that there's a potential for there to be an intervention before we even get to a pandemic if deep learning is involved?
Yes. So essentially, when you have that type of deep learning taking place, then essentially what's able to transpire is, okay. Oh. So when you have that type of deep learning that's taking place, yes, I mean, then we start to be a little bit more proactive.
Okay.
So now you start to see artificial intelligence becoming more proactive, where it starts to see things happening long before they're happening.
Oh, is that like, look, that kind of reminds me of Minority Report, you know, before the crime happens.
Hey, well, hopefully not the crime, but more so the cure.
Yeah, so let's hope it goes that way.
So when we think about it, deep learning is creating the next generation of computing platforms. Okay, so we know the conversational AI, like for example, Alexa and, you know, Google, and Siri's getting better. So
give her some time.
Give her some time. That is able to grab as it pertains to voices, conversations, requests, and all those things, and the things that it searches for. It's consistently learning. Now think about also self-driving cars, where it's like it's taking in all that computational data, where it's looking at, like, for example, streets, roads, then able to start understanding that, okay, hey, through Department of Transportation, learning that cities themselves are ever evolving. So we're building new roads, bridges, and, you know, underpasses and overpasses, and even underneath under tunnels. So like the cool thing about it is like, just think about like what that would do for if you, like 5 years later, you see robo taxis driving either in Seattle or San Francisco or even in your home city. I mean, that's going to be done by a significant amount of deep learning, in the sense where the artificial intelligence is literally taking form to do that. And I kind of mentioned this on consumer apps, where it says that TikTok, which uses deep learning for video recommendations, has outgrown Snapchat and Pinterest combined. Just think about that.
That's interesting.
So Snapchat, once upon a time, was like supposed to be like the future of social media, and Pinterest is like widely popular for, I guess, people creating boards and kind of sucking them in to say, okay, hey, like, yo, you gotta, you know, check out this pin. Well, now you have TikTok, which has completely overshadowed all of them. Like the fact that it knows what kind of videos that you're gonna like, or what is it that you're gonna want to see.
But like my question, okay, so with TikTok,
Yep.
Are you saying like what separated them is this deep learning? Because to me, TikTok, and no offense to anyone who is on TikTok or lost with it, is like Vine. You know, like back in the day. So like was that like the thing that made it stick?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like when we're going, like if you go through Facebook's popular platform, which is, okay, if you go through Facebook's platform, Instagram, right? Yes, you still see a wide array of photos, but you're starting to see more video content, short form video content. I mean, shout outs to Quibi. They were onto something. It just didn't work out. But either way, it's like, you know, video is becoming that thing in which that honestly, it's something in which that connects people because of the fact that they see action, and you can do more with it outside of just still photos.
And our short attention spans.
Unfortunately, that is true.
So Mark, what is this deep learning? What does that do for like law enforcement? Because that's kind of like one of my ordeals is, what if the police get their hands on this and they start using their algorithms to do whatever with it that they want to?
I hate to say it, but that's already happening now. So for example, if you look at a company like Palantir, they use deep learning algorithms and data to be able to use that to kind of like if they pull you over, they're testing it in some places where not only were they able to pull up the data about you, the driver, but also to spot exactly where you've been.
Wow. Yeah, see, I'm gonna stay in the house. I'm cool.
Well, at least you'll stay out of trouble in that process.
That's a fact.
All right, so when we think about deep learning, it requires boundless computational power, right? And so when we think about computational power, right? So look at the trajectory of where we've come, like, you know, AlexNet and all this other stuff, but look at as we come across the spectrum of the cost to train with 2020 hardware versus the time over time, again, rise over time, then essentially look at where we're at. We're now at Tesla. We were at Tesla Autopilot. Now we're at Mina, GP2, and all these different things. These are good things for each and every single one of you to look up because they're very, very interesting projects. And each of these projects belong to a specific company for you to check out. So it would be something like, we all know Tesla Autopilot clearly, but you know, do you know what GP2 was? And now we're at GPT 3. You know, these are interesting things. So when we look at what they have said is they said that while advances in hardware and software have been driving down AI costs by 37% per year, the size of AI models is growing much faster. So which means that there's more data in which that is having to compute over a span of time. So which means that the data sizes are getting much bigger. So something to be mindful of because of course, you know, that's just the training cost, but that doesn't even include, say, for example, the actual data cost. So let's get into it as it pertains to the key crux of deep learning, right? And the reason why we're having these conversations now, because it's like we're putting it on your forefront of these are going to be the major things in which that you got to look at, and it helps you build your investment thesis moving forward over the years to come. So just remember, this is just a learning lesson for you to say, okay, hey, if I really want to understand the future, here's a great breakdown and a great way for me to kind of like start off and looking or showing me where is it that I should start looking. So if we're looking at deep learning and it's creating a boom in AI chips, now anything that you think of that requires any type of processing requires a chip. So all data that is processed is going through some form of a chip. Okay, just want to put that out there.
Yes.
So as let's say AI training costs grows from $1 to 100 or from $1 to 100 million per project, specialized processors such as GPUs and TPUs will account for a majority of incremental growth. So, yeah. And so when we think about like what they're saying is they say the upcoming deployment phase for deep learning will democratize access to AI, benefiting not only large internet companies, but also every industry in the economy. So we kind of talk about this in like kind of this concept of the invisible hand. Mm-hmm. Though that selfishly is going to benefit large internet companies, at the same token, those internet companies, the invisible hand teaches you that society still will always benefit from, say, for example, either something selfish, greedy, or something that's completely designated towards a specific party. Mm-hmm. So when we look at it and moving forward, AI has expanded from vision to literally looking at language. So remember when we talked about these, you know, voice assistant devices? Yes. AI has been sitting back and learning language from humans just from listening in. So your phones, when you talk to your voice assistant, mm-hmm. Also, for example, they now have such things like there's a platform called Otter AI, a private company that it can also dictate the conversation from a Zoom call. So it can also pick up different dialects. So for example, or different tones. So it'll know that it's Tevo talking, I'm talking, or you're talking. Mm-hmm. And it'll like literally put it in transcript format.
So it will be like, okay, it's Jolyn talking when she says.
It's like a little stenographer. Exactly. And that's from language, processing. So when we think about it, like when we first started, like you had like your Googles of the world where it's just like they, you know, literally had folks that would literally sit there and train a computer and say, okay, hey, they would click images and say, okay, hey, is this a dog or is this a cat? Wow. We went from that all the way now to it will know the exact species of a dog or a cat or the type of breed. And then on top of that, it's gotten so well where it's like it even recognizes if Tevo or Jolyn or myself are in the photo.
But see, I remember when Google was doing this for art.
Yep.
Like being able to tell like this painting belongs to this artist or this is this type of art.
Mm-hmm.
That's heavy. Hey, I know them Clubhouse notes would be fire from the Otter AI.
Oh my god. That's a fact. But then now like I said, we've gotten into language. So think about it. Pre-AI, that was most, pretty much industry penetration, most global to 2000 companies today. Computer vision, 2015, select technology companies and startups. Language understanding, AI giants, Google, Facebook, Amazon, OpenAI. And then 2020, reinforcement learning research organizations. The goal here is the goal is that we move on from AI, where we go into the next phase, which later on down the road, where we talk about robotics and all that other stuff, that will be like what we call intelligence assistance.
Flip the script.
So it flips the IA. But we're not there yet. But we're on our road there. And essentially, who knows?
So when you talk about IA and deep learning, and we're looking at that the hype cycle, you think we're still like in that innovation?
We're still in the early innings of. I wouldn't say we're in the innovation, but it depends upon the subject of where we are. So if you're talking about IA, then yeah, that's an innovation stage.
Okay.
If we're talking about the things of what we know within AI and machine learning and deep learning, that's really between early adopters and early majority. Because machine learning is definitely within early majority because it's already there. When we look at the basics of AI, that's probably in the late majority. It's already there. When we talk about like the other parts of like what come after it, where it's able to start, like where it's significantly able to write itself. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, let's cool out on that one.
You can't stop innovation. All right, so OpenAI's GPT-3 is the first AI that understands language. So on the left side, you see, say, for example, a legalized document or legalese document of, let's say, if a company it has to liquidate or what happens on a Series A. Then the other part and what it does is it simplifies the language. So this is what the AI was actually able to do. Now for our lawyer in the building.
Right. So basically it gets rid of all the legalese and just makes it plain.
Wow.
So, and that's exactly what a lawyer would do. The lawyer would be the one who would interpret this document to their client or clients and say, you can do this and that. So if this, then that. But now if you have deep learning and AI doing this for you, okay, lawyers, I don't know how many cousins are going to law school, but
bruh.
But
But shout out to Steve Austin because he actually mentioned something about the Hanson Robotics where they came out with Sophia. And I challenge everybody to go. I challenge everybody to go look up Sophia robot interview where she was being interviewed by CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin, who also helped write the show Billions. He interviewed Sophia, and she literally answered, gave context to her answer, facial expressions, and was able to like literally articulate. And on top of that, she's the first ever robotic citizen in Saudi Arabia. And she's full on AI. Now, of course, can she like survive on her own yet? No. Nowhere near shape, form, or fashion. But the fact that she's able to have like high level conversations, and honestly keep up in conversation. Ooh.
I do want to point out like where it says the right email, design web pages, write code, etc., etc. That all sounds very leisurely.
I guarantee you'll start to see that within the next 12 to 24 months when you look at places like Wix and Squarespace. All right, so deep learning could create more economic value than the internet did. So it's a good thing that I'm saying this is because I believe firmly that we're moving beyond the internet.
Well, I had a question about that.
Go for it.
I think that's great. You can't stop innovation, like you said.
No, you can't.
So if the internet has been like this great equalizer, giving people access, without regards to geography and income, like all different types of things, especially as we see it as it relates to the market, like the internet has helped you know, people link together to research together to do all the things that have happened in the market over these last couple of days. And if the internet is that great equalizer, and now we're moving away from that, what do you think will be the implication once the internet is gone?
Well, the internet will no longer be gone. It'll just be sitting underneath. For example, I'll preface this with a slight little example. When we look at, say, for example, I'm about to break out my software coding hat for a quick second. So, does anybody ever remember this? So, like, for example, or so this is DOS. This is the foundation of what Windows was written on. This was the first ever system in which that Microsoft wrote Windows upon. Like, it's the foundation of what we know as it pertains to Windows. Now, of course, I can do things like, for example, I can do, let's say, this lookup, and I'll say google.com. And then I will take this and I will stop this, come to here.
Someone said, okay, I'm nerding out.
Well, that's a good thing.
I don't remember this.
Oh, it's
Where
okay.
was I when DOS was out?
You were, well, I don't think you were around. So then if we go to here, right? And if I type in that same address that I just copied, it takes me to Google.
Super extra.
So it's on it's still there. Like you said,
it's still sitting underneath.
But we're just building.
We built so much on top of it that honestly, you won't even be able to recognize it.
Yeah, I'm not doing all that.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to spend some time, you know, on a leisurely tip, kick back and thinking about what it will look like for the internet to be underneath, and then this whole new thing is up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think that when we think about what the internet will look like, you're already starting to see it, right? Because you're starting to see it in the Internet of Things. So, like, for example, our watches.
Screens. Yeah, okay.
When we think about our watches, when we think about, like, I think that the world is moving beyond our phones, but more so smaller devices, interconnected devices, aka glasses. And just imagine the data that's going to be able to pull up our, you know, our voice assistants, our sensors, and everything else. It's going to be forever surrounding around us, in which that whenever we need to look up something, we can just literally ask for it. I mean, one of the coolest innovations that I saw, which was deep learning, was what Samsung had unveiled at CES. Now, of course, everybody looks towards his phone, but the interesting thing was they're now making headphones through software or through algorithms that they put together. It's able to detect when you start talking to turn off the music. So if somebody is literally having dialogue with you, you can do that. Or, like, for example, other things in which that we see, like, for example, if we see like what you call it, if you have headphones on through Google, and if I'm speaking to you from a different language, and if I'm wearing headphones from Google,
then you'll hear
we'll both hear the language transfers in real time.
So basically, it's like more and more senses, like our human senses, are being incorporated. So before it was more vision, and now we're moving towards voice. And then I wonder what will be next, because not everything will translate like that.
Of course not. Like, for example, hey Siri, set office lights to red.
Sorry, I wasn't able to find anything like that.
You see what I'm talking about? Like, she's got a long way to go.
She was polite about it, though.
But she was very, very polite.
She said, sorry.
Hey, I like Siri tone. That was, real respectful.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's get back to it. So when we think about like this deep learning, like think about the economic value that it does, because now you've democratized the internet.
Right.
Where now you've given access across multiple different facets, especially when you think about developing countries. It allows them to become more developed, but still have access to that data. So like access to information, access to resources, or to get access to resources. You know, if you think about it, like when we're going through our everyday life, when we look for something, we ask for something to locate us to someplace. And then we also ask it to navigate us to someplace, or we ask it to call someone, or we ask it, to look up the menu of something. That's ultimately the world in which that we're going to be going through.
Well, I think it'll be cool too, because someone just said that, Mark, when you were talking to, I'm not going to say your name because it might activate it, but when you're talking to old girl just now, their device answered. So if the devices can recognize voices, then Siri would know when you're talking to her. She'll know who she belongs to.
Exactly.
Now that's what's up. I need those in my life. In my leisurely life.
So let's think about it in the sense of, well, I guess we've reached the end of, let's say, that portion of the presentation. And that's just a simple glimpse of what we know of when it comes to the deep learning phase of things. Now, of course, it's like things are going to get different when we think about the data center, the reinvention of data centers and what AI does there, and the chips that are going to be required there. So, of course, everybody's thinking about the basics, the NVIDIAs, the AMDs, and the Intels of the world.
People think, we're not going to go there today.
I mean, somebody does. I mean, do you think about that? Okay, that's enough. Okay. All right, so that's that. I mean, and the question is that the reason why we put that out there for deep learning is because there are a few players that were very, very heavy this year that you know of that are in the publicly traded market space. Like, for example, when you saw AMD talk about what they use deep learning for, where they were giving a lot of their deep learning technology to, say, for example, universities for them to look up and to do their research when it came to vaccine research or discovering cures. That requires a lot of deep learning, and the amount of time in which that it used to take to process now is taking less amounts of time to process, which allows them to get to cures or vaccines a lot faster. When we think about NVIDIA and what it does in its data center technology and using, say, for example, artificial intelligence, imagine, or its deep learning intelligence, look at what happened in, self-driving cars. Look at the deep learning in which that it took in order for that to transcribe across an entire industry, and now they're being pretty much licensed through multiple different vehicle manufacturers. I mean, you also have Google Waymo and Amazon stepping into the space with Zoox and many other players. So it's letting you know that this space in deep learning is really starting to heat up. And I mean, honestly, we're very much so in the early innings of this, but yet at the same token, grab your popcorn, because man.
So how would you follow how well a semiconductor company is involving themselves in that type of space?
And this is the reason why I like to actually follow, for example, listening to enthusiasts within the space. I also like to look at, say, for example, paying attention to their investor days are very, very crucial, because then it's like when you hear that, you get to hear what is it that they're working on? What is it that they believe that the future is for their company? And then they give you talking points, so that way you can go back to the drawing board and start looking at and saying, all right, well, this is what they're saying, but what else is this is just a small piece of it.
Right.
What else can be built with this technology? Yeah. And so when you produce that type of opportunity, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so I know that we're skipping subjects. We're gonna skip across, and we can't just go at this all at the same time. So we're gonna take this in pieces. So given that we're talking about deep learning, we're going to talk a little bit also about electric vehicles.
Yes, talk about it.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. There it is. So when we look at EV sales, they say that EV sales should accelerate significantly. And I agree 100%. I mean, word on the street is that there's a major manufacturer that now wants to jump into the space and all of a sudden have all of their vehicle fleet electric by 2035.
Saw that too.
Yeah, I saw that. 2035.
What year?
That's a long way out. I mean, look, y'all, it's 2021. I don't know if I can wait that.
Okay, I'm trying to be leisurely. Y'all got me messed up.
Based on that time, you guys trying to go after my maybe my future child or something like that for them to start learning how to drive. And by that time, it's I don't even think anybody will really have a driver's license by that time. I think we'll just have robotech. You know what? I might just leave it alone. So electric vehicles are approaching sticker price parity with gas powered vehicles. So pretty much meaning that they're coming on par with the cost of your average internal combustion engine. So pretty much that whole argument is going to be moot, because pretty much you can buy the EV vehicle at the same price that you could buy today's standard vehicle, probably if not cheaper. Because I mean, if everything in what we see in what's happening with some major players that are actually major,
right,
then we could possibly see some of those costs drop a little bit further.
But you know what's interesting, when you think about how far we've come, like with the electric
I have a
vehicle
feeling
space.
I'm gonna be hella shady in this subject.
Yeah, I think it's like when you think about how far we come, like, everyone was just like, oh, there's no way that it's going to be able to, accelerate and go fast. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be able to compete with, cars that have engines and whoop-de-woo. And now, I mean, just think about how far a Tesla could go.
I'm just saying we should go back and look at that episode where they were talking about look who killed the EV, but that's a whole nother situation. But if you really want to know about that, go, they made it available for free on YouTube. If you want to watch it, look up who killed the EV. It's a very interesting documentary. But based on Wright's law, they forecast at ARC that EV sales should increase roughly 20-fold from 2.2 million in 2020 to 40 million units in 2025.
Okay, so now this time frame is more like it.
Now this is a little different, because now it's like,
maximize.
I can picture 2025.
Right, I'm saying.
I can. I mean, like a whole nother 10 years. I mean,
35.
I'm just gonna tell y'all something. As a VC, if I hear that a company gives me a 5-year plan, honestly, that's just a startup. It's very, very hard to believe, especially when I haven't seen like the, any of the meat and potatoes or any of the validation or key performance indicators. Now, you're a publicly traded company, and honestly, it's 2021.
Right.
And you're telling me that you're going to have your entire fleet by 2035? I mean, you have all this manufacturing, like, you could just like get this on and popping, but I'm going to just leave this alone.
It's a whole nother
I think it's just a whole nother generation of, leadership and everything else, but
But then the funny thing is, by then, guess who's going to be left in the dust?
I don't need to guess, so. They say, we believe the biggest downside risk to our forecast is whether traditional automakers can transition successfully to electric and autonomous vehicles. Now, I'm going to add a little sauce onto this one.
Go ahead, bro.
Because I believe that I don't think that that's a downside risk, because I think that there's more players that are stepping into this space. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, of course, NIO is still a little early, but you have NIO, you have Lucid Motors, and all these other ones, and they're starting off in the luxury space. And then I'm probably sure that as they move on, then they'll come into more affordable if they're successful. But then you also have like folks like Rivian, which honestly, people are sleeping on Rivian. Now, of course, they're starting off a little bit expensive, but then at the same token, I think that they're going to do the same thing.
But don't they all start off on the luxury side and then
break
into affordable?
Of course, because that's where your highest margins are. And when your highest margins are there, then those high margins produce great profit, and from that profit allows you to reinvest and come up with an affordable vehicle.
But if these, combustible engine companies, gas guzzlers, if they're already losing money in market share, why wouldn't they just start with an affordable EV? Like, why would they need to start high? Because to me, that seems like that's just going to put them behind.
Interesting.
It's a great question.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna leave it alone. So electric vehicle sales have taken share in good times and tough times. Wow. This is the first time that I'm reading this. So honestly, you guys are getting I freestyle. So I'm literally going off at the top of the dome to give each and every single one of you knowledge and wisdom on the fly. So while sales of gas-powered vehicles decreased during the recent COVID-19 pandemic, EV sales continued to increase globally. Yo, can we tone down the shit? Yo, these lights are too bright.
They was definitely
They're too bright.
They were laughing when they were.
Yo. So, I mean,
they slammed the key on the period.
Clearly. So your gas-powered vehicle in 2019 was negative 4%. And electric vehicles had grew to 16%. And, you know, we're not going to talk about 2020. So
Ooh.
God bless.
Wow, negative 15%. I think we just need to put it on the record. Let me say it loud for the people in the back. Negative 15% for gas-powered vehicles in
Year over year.
2020.
And a growth
Wow.
of 30% year over
For
year.
electric vehicles. Wow.
So now a lot of folks are going to say, okay, hey, you know, Mark, the data is a little skewed, but mind you, this is my data model. So you're going to have to challenge this against the folks in whom which that honestly are, I believe, a little bit smarter than I am because of the fact that they have more data. Wright's Law has modeled the decline in battery costs successfully.
Wow.
This shade is so real. So the largest cost component to an EV vehicle is its battery. So if you can ultimately find ways in which that you could become more efficient when it comes to manufacturing and process of the battery, as well as, you know, other parts of the vehicle like the body and where you can store it, then honestly, now it's like, even if you're charging at, let's say, you know, X amount of dollars, then you just increase your profit margin significantly. A la, I wonder who does that sound like?
We already know who that
All
sounds
right.
like.
So like they say, model cost decline, forecast cost decline, and then reported prices. And clearly, as you can see, over a time period in US dollar versus the amount produced in megawatt hours produced, as you can see, the cost is declining pretty much.
Oh, I love when, you know, certain EV companies pass on that savings to the consumer.
My goodness, the shade keeps coming. Yo, I think we all need sunglasses.
Shady.
Yo,
pass it on. Yo,
electric
they're still
vehicle.
profitable. They're still making profits quarter after quarter.
Yo, so wow.
They're reducing their prices.
Yeah.
Wow, you know what I'm saying?
Electric vehicles are approaching sticker price parity, like they said, with gas-powered vehicles. Now, let's look at some examples. In 2019, your Toyota Camry was at $24,000, whereas the 350-mile range EV vehicle, we know what that was $50,000. And then in 2021, the $25,000 vehicle is at $39,000. So, and what they're projecting is that by 2023, which this could be coming in so much sooner, is at $26,000 for the Camry, as well as $26,000 for a 350-mile range EV. Now, word on my street is we may be possibly getting some real news about a $25,000 vehicle coming in at $25,000 by a certain manufacturer against the same company, against somebody who said that they are real chefs. But you know,
oh wow,
you know,
wow.
And then we get to that same $26,000 vehicle that is a Toyota Camry in 2025, and then $18,000 for that electric vehicle.
And
I'm just saying,
still profitable quarter over quarter. Come on now.
Yo.
Hey Mark,
that's a flex.
I got a like a question that I know the answer to for you. So when did you get your Tesla?
I got my Tesla in 2018.
And if you don't mind sharing, how much did you pay for your Tesla?
I bought my Tesla for the Model 3 Performance for $68,000.
Now, if you were
this
to...
is such shady. You wear the shades.
Listen, question.
Yes.
Hold on. If you were to trade in your vehicle today,
yes,
what would the value tag that, like, what price would they put on it if you traded it in today?
I was recently quoted for $65,000.
Oh wow. Down from 68,000, you said?
What year was that again? Was that 28?
Was that? I think
I heard 2018
okay,
Model
I'm gonna
3.
just take these back.
So you know, if you're wow. When a chef knows how to hook up leftovers, that's how you know.
Yo.
Chef.
Let's just say, yeah.
So in addition to costs, so what we say is EPA range and over 0 to 60. My God, this is not fair. In addition to costs, EVs are competing on range and performance. So the auto market is undergoing a shift to both electric and autonomous. ARC believes that the traditional automakers lack the software and electrical engineering talent necessary to succeed.
Wow.
Okay, now of course, we're having fun with it tonight. We're just having fun, but yet at the same token, we're having fun while enjoying the data. So thank you, ARC. So they say, like, for example, if you're looking at 0 to 60, you have the Hyundai Ioniq and the Nissan Leaf. Okay. And then the Nissan Leaf today just got a little bit more efficient. Okay. Now, of course, as we move up, we have the 2018 Tesla Model 3.
Really?
Yo.
at probably 4.4 seconds in 0 to 60, and its range is, pretty much up there.
Wow.
And then you have the Tesla Model 3 long range, all-wheel drive today, which is broken under 4 seconds in 0 to 60, and its EPA range has essentially gone up. Now, it's very, very interesting because you have the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, which a lot of folks have talked about. It's, very, very fast, and then you pay about $175,000 for that vehicle. And look at the efficiency. It's not efficient. So for an electric vehicle, I'm just leave that alone.
But you know what? Wait, go back to that, because I think now I'm going to start telling people.
And that's a Ford Mustang E, by the way. That also isn't as efficient either.
E is not for efficient?
No, that's for electric.
Okay. So I'm going to start telling people that they lack software and electrical engineering talent necessary to succeed. I'm gonna just start telling people that that's gonna just be the diss. It's like, I'm sorry, but you lack the software and talent to succeed.
Look, I just wanted to point out one more thing. Oh Lord! So we listened to the Tesla earning call together.
We did,
and they were talking about one of their new models. What model was that?
That is the Tesla Model S Plaid.
And I think they mentioned like a certain speed from 0 to 60.
0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds.
So it would be.
And also, it also gives you 520 miles plus in range.
Yeah, God bless.
And it also allows you to play AAA game titles with a certain GPU. Yeah, we're just gonna move on.
Who's making that GPU? Who's making that GPU?
Do your homework.
At today's battery prices, cell-to-vehicle technology enables long-range EVs at lower prices. My God, if anybody was watching that Tesla shareholder day.
Wow.
So cell-to-vehicle design. So pretty much what they're saying is that they figured out a way to make the batteries pretty much 50% relative to battery cells integrated into module packs. So what does that mean? They're telling you that it's becoming way more, like they're easing the density, but yet at the same token, they're making it more efficient. So instead of it just being like those little slide packs, they're actually putting them into cylinder, and I think that's the 406080 or 60. Yeah, 4680. So shoot.
I mean, hello.
Okay,
I know.
Jolyn.
I know. My stock crash.
I drink and I know things.
I know my stock crash.
All right, so at a given battery pack size, cell-to-vehicle technology should enable longer range vehicles at lower price points. So as you can see that they're figuring out ways to make it more efficient, and then on top of that to even add in more batteries to pack in, but yet at the same token, essentially, you know what? Let's just move on. If traditional automakers overcame obstacles, global EV sales could scale roughly 20-fold from 2.2 million in 2020 to 40 million by 2025.
Wow.
Now, let's see. ARC expects the sales of smaller, cheaper neighborhood electric vehicles will rise dramatically as a share of total EV sales. Now, in Seattle, we have something called Smart Car to Go. Now, those things are like really compact cars, very efficient because of the fact that they can drive through the city. You don't really need to go anywhere. You can just go from one neighborhood to the other. And just imagine those being electric. But then, exactly. But then just imagine if you had robo-taxis that was there.
It would kill that market.
It would just completely kill that entire market, because of the fact is, it's like you just literally have a vehicle. Now, of course,
leisure is the key to the future.
Yes, which would therein lead us to automation, but you know what? We're gonna leave that alone. So, on that note, woo! You know, I need to step up out of that shade document.
Yo, listen.
That was.
But then you could tell, like, right when they're about to be shady, because it's in bold print.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's how you know.
Yo, like they just.
They let it be known.
That's right.
Okay, so what does all this mean when we think about the electric vehicle space? Because we're very much so in the early innings of electric vehicles now, in all fun and games. Of course, you kind of know who we were hinting towards.
Right.
Now, we also know that there are some other players that are trying to, step into the space. We know that it's going to take them time to scale up, and then on top of that, where do all those existing vehicles that they already have within their fleet, where do they go? So. You get a car. Just kidding. And especially when you have, say, for example, government saying, or states saying, now we want to go zero emissions. So if you have states that want to go zero emissions, that also kind of puts a hindrance on a lot of your internal combustion engines. And the thing that we haven't even talked about yet, which is the large elephant in the room, is semi trucks, which are also like one of the
right now though.
Well, you know, I heard some things, but what I do know is that when we look at it, just imagine if you go zero emissions, that puts certain players at the top of the list when it comes to, okay, hey, now we dominate the space. Now, the reason why we're educating you and like just really like doing somewhat of a small dive into ARK Invest big ideas 2021 is because it starts to spur the conversation of, not only just the what will be conversations, but what is happening now to lead us to the what will be. And they do a very good job of kind of like breaking it down as it pertains to the numbers. Now it's our turn to start looking at it and saying, okay, hey, well, who are the players within the space? So get to know the players within each space. And from there, start to figure out, okay, hey, what is it that they're doing now to prepare themselves for the future? Now, one thing that I typically do is, and I'll give you a little secret, I look for tangible,
keyword,
like tangible results, tangible product. I'm not looking for things in which that have been drawn in Unreal Engine or Unity, or say, for example, somebody did a great graphic design and made you walk through a green screen. What I'm looking for, and I'm also not looking for a product or a service that ultimately is something in which that is just purely concept. I'm looking for something in which that actually has some form of market validation, because then therein you get to understand exactly if the market agrees. Like you can create an electric vehicle and nobody buys it. I mean, we've seen many electric vehicles that have come out since, of course, the big dog in the room, Tesla. We've seen many other players step in, and honestly, it's like, crickets. All right, so that's on the EV side. And then remember what we were talking about on the deep learning side. Start figuring out like who are some of those deep learning projects in which that either they started off in research at colleges and they went from research and development to now they're in the full-fledged landscape. Start looking at companies and and the best way to do it is go back in this presentation and look at where is it that you can see that those companies or those are the types of projects that are deep learning projects, and then just get to know what they are. Now, of course, the future seems a little bit scary because if people are talking about, well, the attack of the robots and all this other stuff. I mean, like I said, you can't stop innovation. I mean, as much as we want convenience and everything else, and we want, a much more efficient future, it's going to spur innovation. Somebody's going to come up with something to solve a problem, and then that problem gets solved, and then ultimately somebody builds upon that. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
What do you think about like some of these companies that are trying to produce like just a better battery?
That's cool. I mean, because it's going to require infrastructure. I mean, it's not going to be just one specific. It's not always going to be one specific player that's going to literally just step in and just be the ultimate dominant player in the space. It's going to require a collective. Like, for example, when we look at charging stations, right? You have the Tesla charging station, you have ChargePoint, and then you have a lot like something else. Sooner or later, when you see all these vehicle manufacturers step out, they're going to probably all have to work together somehow, some way in tandem for this really to take shape, form, and fashion. So if anybody's looking to start a gas station, I mean, it'd probably be smart to even set up a charging station at your gas station.
And very convenient for me, so.
That's a fact.
Yeah, so there it is. All right, so that's it from the presentation. Now, Jolyn, I know that you've been sitting over there kikiing like with your questions, because I know you got some on the horizon. So
I've been asking my questions throughout. And I mean, me personally, as I say, the future is leisurely. It really is. And as I'm looking at, so what I plan to do is look for the companies, like not only look at the big ideas and look at the companies that are publicly traded,
Mhm.
but I also want to know like these private companies who are potential acquisition targets.
Yep.
So looking at the publicly traded companies and seeing like what they lack or where they need to be, bolstered up a bit, and
Mhm.
then pairing that with who are these other like private companies, startups who have a solid team, who have been like showing what they're up to in the world as far as being able to offer something to these larger players.
Yep.
So I'll be looking at that personally, and then also I'm just looking to see like which companies are going to make it onto the leisure list,
Okay.
meaning the companies that I would invest in. So that's what my research life is going to be looking like. I mean, obviously not this weekend because I got things to do, but maybe one of my leisurely mornings, I'm gonna, start looking more into that because I'm pretty set right now with where, like, I'm comfortable with where my portfolio stands now, but I also want to look ahead and just be ready
Mhm.
for things that may, like, come to the top.
And the cool thing is you also have to look at exactly how is it that the economies will also have to adapt in order for those things to take place.
Yes.
So if the economy is not ready for it, then it's just not going to take place.
Then we have our default, like, who's dominating now, that's where you would invest.
Exactly. And it's super cool in which that we're thinking about that, because when we talk about private companies, if you want to get to know like who are those private companies that are like kind of like being talked about, for sure, check out TechCrunch, VentureBeat. You can even check out The Verge, Engadget. Those are all great learning sources and resources in which that you can go check out and just gather news about. I mean, if you have Apple News, then definitely like just put in those and you'll find them. Or just even putting in technology, deep learning, or artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and it'll give you tons of data of the who's who within those spaces, whether they're publicly traded or they're private, and also things that are just being researched in the educational space. And the reason why those things matter is because of the fact that it kind of gives you a gauge. When you look at things from the research standpoint, from like education, it lets you know exactly what the next generation is kind of like in the process of where they're looking, because they don't have to worry about shareholders or anything like that. They're just focused on just purely research and for the love of just being academics and just, innovation.
And they're enthusiastic about it too.
Very much so. Hence the reason why it's very hard to invest in companies that have academic backgrounds, because it's hard to convert it into a business. Then on top of that, you also have like the startups. Those are the folks in whom which that they are very much focused on just solving problems. And they know that they're going to solve X amount of problems, and then probably somewhere within their life cycle, they're probably going to get acquired by a larger company and go work with that company and further on the mission. And then you look at the larger companies and see exactly like, okay, hey, well, what are they investing in? When you start looking at their acquisitions of what they've done over a period of time, it should really start to show you the roadmap. So good stuff.
So would you say like this ARK Invest document is a good like starting point when you're starting to think about what will be?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. Because of the fact is, it's like a lot of these subjects are built upon what will be.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The subjects within this ARK's Big Ideas 2021. They focus a lot on what will be. I mean, good investors focus on what will be. Decent or average investors, they focus more so on what's happening right now.
Speaking of which, we need to think about, speaking of, what's happening right now.
A lot.
What are your final words? Because after this, seriously, I'm over it. Like, I do not want to talk about GameStop. So it's like GameStop it right now.
I like what you did there.
There it is.
Yes, the Thursday shade. I'm here for it.
It's activation mode right there.
Let's talk about
like
it.
A band.
I know,
every time I wear this hat, we look like a band.
Wait, is Tevo the singer and I'm like the drummer?
He's the R&B singer.
What?
Give us a little
That's not what was or what will be.
That is not at all. All right. So let's talk about it, family, because a lot of you have been asking me and like writing me so many different messages. And honestly, here's my take. You had investors that ultimately on Wall Street bets that found a loophole, or not even really a loophole, they just found a strategy. It was a pretty dope strategy. They figured out a way to literally short or to literally play against the short interest. They saw that folks in the market were shorting against stocks that were already at, beaten up levels. And essentially they said, okay, hey, we can literally do a short squeeze, which could ultimately drive the stock up and ultimately make a lot of money. Now, I'm not going to argue and go into this argument of who did what, or or who's better, who's well, actually, I will. I will do that because there is some wrong here on both sides. The wrong side on, say, for example, the institutional money side, and we've always known who institutional money was. I mean, I think I did a video on who institutional money was back in the early days of the Come Up series. So, we're not brand new to this. If you really want to, go back and look in the playlist, your Come Up, and you'll see institutions versus institutional money versus retail. And you'll see exactly the differentiation between who they are versus who we are. And I really kind of like eloquently put it. They're people just like you who work at these places. The only difference is that they represent an entity and you represent yourself. And so a lot of folks, they have an issue with the fact that when they lose, that ultimately somebody backs them. Well, it's the same thing in most businesses. If something happens to your business, you go look for a loan for somebody to bail you out. And if you do have the resources, or if you do have the network or the cachet, then most likely somebody could bail you out. Now, if you don't, then that's unfortunate. Then most likely you'll go belly up, chapter 7, chapter 11, and then you're done. When it's in life as an individual, I mean, you may have folks that may come around you and circle their arms around you and say, hey, you can do so much better and we're going to support you and we're going to help you get back and up and going. But that's not the majority of people that live in today's world. So which means that if you lose on your own, then you lose on your own. It's your portfolio with your name attached to it. So ultimately you got to be smart with your investments. Now, a lot of times it's like people look at traders as like amateur. And for the most part, most of your traders are amateur, especially on the retail side. They're amateur. Now, it's not to say that those amateur traders aren't good. It's just the fact that most, and like I've said this stat before, 98% of retail traders will lose 100% of their entire portfolio. And many times they trade on speculation. Well, speculation is not a strategy. Speculation is not something that can be quantified. It's just something that you're following that you found from somebody else. That doesn't compute. Then on top of that, when we look at, say, for example, on the institutional side, we have folks in which that are doing significantly high frequencies of trading. And to them, it's like, it's just a job. If they lose exorbitant amounts of money, then that's on them. Let's bring it into the story as it pertains to this Melvin Capital. They literally decided to beat on their chest and show the world or the retail world that they thought that they were God and ultimately that they can literally just punk these folks. It's a strategy. It's a tactic. We talked about this. If you actually read the book from the book club called Thinking Strategically, there was a thing in there, and I kind of alluded to it, to a once president, but also it's a strategy that's used across multiple different facets, aka brinkmanship. Brinkmanship is taking your adversary to the brink and compelling them to pull back. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, there's some issues to that brinkmanship. Because if they call your card and just to see they want to check your shell just to see if you ain't hard boiled, then ultimately you're in trouble. Because now what they did was they got themselves into a short squeeze. So what does a short squeeze look like? A short squeeze looks like where, say, for example, they're doing significant amount of call options, but yet at the same token they're buying and they're holding. And all the while that, say, for example, somebody's trying to get you to compel and sell, they're betting against. So, for example, for every time that you buy or every single time that you play a call, somebody on the other side is playing, say, for example, put against the position, betting that it's going to go away. Or in the sense of go down, the stock is going to drop. But the problem is this group, Wall Street Bets, banded together and said, hey, we hold the line, we're not going to sell. Now, the problem is when it doesn't go your way and you're trading on this exorbitant amounts of margin, which some folks were, then essentially now you put yourself at risk for, say, for example, now you either got to cover the margin. And if you want to keep the short sell going, which means that you're betting against the stock, you're betting that the stock is going to go down, you have to keep adding capital. Well, the stock kept going up. It kept holding up and ultimately it became volatile, and its volatile swings only just went up like a rubber band. Okay. Now let's talk about like moving forward into what took place over these last set of days. Melvin Capital had to get bailed out, I think, by Citadel. And here's the thing that where a lot of folks don't understand exactly how this works. You have brokerages that were literally saying, okay, hey, we carry X amount of risk, which means that we carry X amount of liquidity on the side. Now, if you think about it, if folks were executing 3 million contracts, if you think about it, in every contract in an option, there's 100 shares. And when you put out an option contract, that means that there's somebody on the other side that's willing to either buy or sell that contract at that price. Now, here's the problem with that. There were only 69.7 million shares outstanding. If you think about it, if there's 3 million contracts or 300,000 contracts, you multiply that times, say, for example, 100, how are you going to occupy all those shares? How are you going to occupy all those shares? There's not enough. So that drove up that now, essentially, we have an over amount of shares outstanding. Now, how do you deal with that when it comes to... Stop. How do you deal with that? Even Butter's upset with this conversation. So how do you deal with that as it pertains to, say, for example, the liquidity issue? So when we talk about the liquidity issue, now we're talking about it from the sense of, okay, now brokerages have to literally float that liquidity. Now, you think as traders or as individuals, you think that ultimately that by you going through your brokerage, that it's just like, okay, hey, I paid this money to my brokerage and then it's like literally I bought the stock from my brokerage. Wrong. What happens is you put out the order and then they send it out to a market maker and then therein the order gets executed and then it comes back to you in the sense that, okay, hey, your order has been executed. Now, we saw this issue with Robinhood. We saw this issue with a few other brokerages out there. They have to have a certain float of liquidity, and it's more positions within their brokerages other than just GameStop, AMC, and many of the other players, and which that a lot of folks were trading on because of the fact that it was a short squeeze. That was a strategy. It had nothing to do with any of these companies being solid companies at all, because they're not. If you really look at GameStop, and if we really, really want to get technical, we're going to go for it. Okay.
Yes.
If we really, really want to get technical as it pertains to a company that we know of as it pertains to GameStop, here's the problem. GameStop is in a market in which that they're brick and mortar. Okay, now you're saying that they want to go e-commerce. Here's the problem with them going e-commerce. Okay, if we're talking about consoles, now you're competing against Microsoft and Sony PlayStation. They already have their networks where most people are going digital. Here's another player that you're competing against. You're competing against Best Buy when it comes to, say, for example, those products in which that not only can they buy the games, but they can also buy something else and get a better service. I mean, if you're talking about the used game market service, then that market is ultimately dying out because you can't really get the same amount of value because of the depreciation. It depreciates worse than, say, for example, a vehicle coming off of a car lot. Okay, so if we're talking about you still going e-commerce and say, for example, okay, we're not going to play within the console space. Okay, we're going to play in, say, for example, let's go in PC. Well, that's even a further problem because now you're competing against the Origins of the world, which is EA. Now you're competing against Battle.net, that's Call of Duty. Now you're competing up against, say, for example, the Uplays for Assassin's Creed and all those services. Or you're competing up against one of the even biggest players, which is Valve, which they're based here in the Northwest. But they also create this platform called Steam. And on top of that, you're going up against other places like CD Keys, where it's like they literally just give you the CD key, you buy the CD key, and then you're done. If you think about every single other GameStop out there, and I know there's going to be some folks out there talking about, well, Mark, honestly, it's like my kids want to go to GameStop. Yo, by all means, go for it. But keep in mind that in 2020, this was the same company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. And I know what you're going to say also there. Oh, that was due to COVID. Oh, really? Go check their finances from 2019, because I guarantee you it's the same sad story. So if we really, really want to think about it, and I'm not even going to get on AMC, because ultimately, now that they gave up that market share to, say, for example, streaming, you really think that streaming is going to give that back? Yeah, I get it. When COVID-19 is over, people are going to want to go hang out in the movie theaters. But let me ask you this. Let one person cough in your movie theater. What are you going to do?
Oh, I'm gone. What?
See, that thing right there, it's going to take time. And at that same token, that's going to take time for you to get back to your normal. Butter, stop.
He's not feeling this combo.
Like, look now.
Come here.
He is not feeling this.
So when we think about it, here, let me get him. So when we think about it, go lay down. So when we think about it, you know, the time for this is where it's like, if you're scholars, you got to think the long term. And if you're chasing, say, for example, something, and here's the other part where it comes into when it comes into the foray. You got to know exactly what the landscape was of what was going on. If you really thought that this was about the stocks, then you completely missed the point. The reason why Wall Street Bets got into that whole spackle with, say, for example, institutional money was because of the fact that this was more so all about, I mean, honestly, for me, looking at it from the outside in, this really looks like ego, where both sides of ego are literally competing against each other and seeing exactly which one is going to literally cave in first. Now, on one side, retail investors make a solid point. Now, of course, there's the other players out there that like the institutional money that want to recognize themselves as, say, for example, retail money that are posing as retail money. I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to let you guys know that honestly, if a person is representing over $3.2 billion and yet they're posing and saying, hey, I side with, say, for example, the retail traders, something's wrong. I just want to say that something's wrong. And honestly, it's like you have to go back and ask yourself, why is it that they're trying to earn the side or earn the favor of the people? You know, honestly, when we think about it and in these moments of time, you know, you can go back and look at Volkswagen. You can also go look at like stocks like Tilray. They were also short squeezed as well. And when we look at it in a fleeting moment of time, do we see this as an uprising as it pertains to retail traders? By all means, go ahead. But think about it like this. And I really want you guys to really like ponder hard on this subject. If you really think that this was all retail traders, then tell me exactly how much capital did it take for, let's say, a stock to go from $17 all the way up to $425 over a span of days. And if you are really going to sit there and tell me that that was just retail traders holding a line, then honestly, you're missing it. You're completely missing it. Because I guarantee you, don't get me wrong, those retail traders, they have a bunch of smart retail traders in there that probably do their due diligence and find awesome dope picks as it pertains to trades. By all means, go for it. But then there's also a bunch of folks that are following just because of the fact that they heard about it. And here's an interesting stat line that you can look at. When you start hearing from your barber or folks in which that you know that have never done any studying in the stock market that are now all of a sudden talking about the same stock that you were looking at,
Listen,
there may be a problem here. There may be a slight problem, and maybe you just need to go back and ask yourself, are we technically now in a bubble here when it comes to this particular position? Now, for all intents and purposes, hey, this stock could go up to, you know, to the moon like they say that it will, or this stock can come crashing down. In my history, I've seen that these things typically don't end well, because here's the thing. Here's the problem. Let's say that all things have succeeded. We got the stock to $1,000. Here's the problem. Has anybody heard from GameStop CEO? And here's the other part. Many folks are talking about, well, GameStop is doing this, but how many of you even know who's the chief level talent at GameStop? How many of you even know who's on their board? So you're investing into a company in which that you just know about maybe what they do or what they, you know, were good at once upon a time, but you don't even know who their leadership is. That could possibly potentially pose a problem. And so my thing is that once when this stock gets to this hypothetical 1,000, then what? Somebody's going to want to take profit. And then at the end of the day, what happens when that institutional money says, okay, hey, let's let them have their fun. Let them figure it out. And then all of a sudden, somebody's sitting there holding and the stock doesn't move after that. Then what? Who's going to sell? Then it's just going to be that waiting period of who sells the stock. And then when the stock starts selling, who starts losing? Is it the last retail trader that's caught holding the bag? See, that's the thing that we got to look at, is in the sense of, okay, you know, what's the purpose behind the trade? You know, what's really the trade? What's the reason why for the trade? If you don't know the why for the trade, then why is it that you're trading it? And so the thing is, don't come run to us and ask us for, you know, say, for example, justification or for our blessing to trade it. You know, because here's the thing, I don't control the button when it comes to your portfolio. I know that Jolyn doesn't, neither does Tevo. So you have to make your own decision, and you have to ask yourself this question. is this part of the wealth generation plan that I have? And am I willing to accept any of the potential risks, the downside risks that could potentially come from me being in this trade and not knowing exactly when or where the knife will fall? Trust me, I've seen somebody try to catch a falling knife. It was not a good ending.
I don't think I want to see that.
Yeah, that don't sound like a good idea.
So all in all, I'm saying this. It's like, if you're in this for speculation, then be willing to admit that you're in it for speculation. And if you're willing to, like, play with a little bit of risk, then by all means. If you want that smoke and fire, by all means, welcome it into your door. But at the same token, that's essentially something that you yourself have to live with. And at the same token, whatever effects it takes to your portfolio, that is on you. So for me, like for anybody that wants to know exactly what I did, I shorted GameStop. There's the truth. Newsflash, I shorted GameStop. And honestly, it took me a minute to execute when normally when I'm looking to execute any other trade, I'm out. But this one, it took me a little bit longer. Why? Because you had a lot of brokerages that were in flux. Now, that lets me know as a litmus test that is this where I want to be when things get really, really volatile? My answer is no.
Full disclosure, I stuck to the rivers and the lakes that I'm used to. GameStop has nothing to do with leisurely, so your girl was not involved. I just sat back and watched, listened to both sides, and had to listen to a lot of confessionals. It was, what did I say earlier? It was like Usher 2000s, in the early 2000s. Usher, came with that record. These are my confessions. My inbox was filled with y'all's confessions. And really, I get it. You just want to be able to.
It's a rush.
To talk it out or whatever.
And it's an experience. It's an experience in which that each and every single one of you, it's like, okay, hey, if this is an experience that you're going to go through as an early stage trader, then by all means. But just understand that essentially that it comes with risks. And with that risk comes either rewards or consequences. And if you're okay with that, again, regret minimization framework. If at the end of this trade, are you going to regret not getting into this trade, given that pretty much you don't know where this is going to go? And if you're okay with that, then by all means, go for it. If not, then maybe you should think twice about essentially trying to jump in and literally step into this smoke fight. And honestly, that had nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, none of these folks are going to replenish your portfolio if, say, for example, it drops. They're not going to start a GoFundMe for you so that way you can get your money back. It's not going to happen. Don't come to us if that's what happens. Now, if you win big, then congratulations. If you won big, congratulations. If you're winning big, congratulations. Kudos to you. But again, the only thing that I'm erring to the side of caution is don't be the last one at the party. Now, a lot of folks want me to address the situation as it pertains to the brokerages shutting me down. Now, mind you, I don't work for any of these brokerages. They don't pay any of my bills. They don't keep my lights on, no nothing. They don't pay me a single dime. So one thing I will say this is that essentially they all have liquidity. They all have bosses. They all have boards and bosses that they have to report to. And at the end of the day, it's very simple. Don't lose money. Don't lose money. And here's the thing. A lot of you think that essentially that Wall Street Bets is for the people. It's very hard for me to literally accept somebody who's for the people that says, when I hear a lot of racist posts that I see that are posted through Wall Street Bets. But you know what? That's just me.
If we really want to talk about it.
That's just me. So essentially, when I look at the people that are really for the people, I see them really trying to educate people. I don't see them talking negatively about people. Honestly, it's like they're not trying to force somebody into a trade. They're literally trying to teach people exactly how it's done. Now, can brokerages get better? Brokerages are not innocent either. Those brokerages need to be more transparent as it pertains to what's in their terms and services. They need to be more transparent as it pertains to what's going on. Hell, send a post. You guys have no problem in sending everybody a notification when there's a pre-IPO offering or this type of offering of what your services does. You can send a push notification, which ultimately reads some type of documentation that educates your users. You should really look towards platforms that are willing to do that. And if they're not willing to do that, then you really need to ask yourself, are they really for me? And really, they're not. They're that's the business. That's literally what the business is. So the goal is be educated investors and traders. The more educated that you are, then the more aware that you are. And even then, you're not always going to get it right. But I guarantee you this, when you're an educated trader and investor, meaning that you actually take the time to study, then that becomes a totally different ball game. Stop listening to all these folks in whom which that are just talking up talking points just to get their faces on screen, just so that way they can get their little, their side of the story out. It's not, nobody cares about their side of the story. We don't, because at the end of the day, whatever their story is, it has no impact on your portfolio, none whatsoever. You can have folks that are going up on CNBC and talking about, well, hey, this is this is that. And to all certain degrees, their points may be fair. But then at the same token, I also watch what they say and what they do. And it's very funny to me when you sit there and say that you are not knowledgeable about something, but yet all of a sudden it's like you have no problem in going on Twitter talking about you're getting ready to execute a trade at X amount of dollars and everything else. I'm glad that you gave it over to donations and everything else, but don't sit there and cap on TV and sit there and say that you were not knowledgeable and that you didn't know what you were doing, when yet you have the knowledge to execute a call option trade. You have the knowledge to literally send folks to Wall Street bets. You have the knowledge to sit there and literally say that their information and research is just as good as some of those Wall Street traders, which it is. But yet at the same token, stop trying to remove yourself out of the equation. Always look for the folks in whom which that are looking to tap dance when it comes to the data versus the folks in whom which that are willing to stand firm and just tell you the truth. Here at the Come Up series, you ask us a question, or if they ask me a question, I'm going to stand firm on it and answer it. This is the last time that I talk about any of these stocks. This is the last time I talk about this situation when it comes to Wall Street bets or institutional money. If you need to learn more, then learn about who they are and how is it that they operate and what their strategy is. I told you from day one, from the moment that you step into a trade, know that there's always someone betting against you. That's the business. And if you guys think that ultimately that essentially that these brokerages or these institutional investors are your friends, keep believing that. One thing to know though, these are the same institutional money holders that also manage the pensions as it pertains to teachers and everything else. Now, what they're doing as it pertains to riskiness, I'm not for it. But yet at the same token, it's good to know the entire landscape from all different shapes, sizes, and fashions. When you know that, then you can actually make an educated decision on your own or come to your own conclusion. That's not my duty to do so. But my thing is, moving on out, I only invest in dope companies. I pick winners. The reason why I shorted GameStop is because of the fact that I know that that company is not a winner. And if the CEO from GameStop or AMC want to come onto the Come Up series and talk about what their position is or where they stand on things, our door at the Come Up series is more than open. We are more than fair. We definitely want to hear your side of the story. But know this, when you come onto the Come Up series, there is no capping, because ultimately, if we catch you lying, we will definitely call you out on the lies.
Getting flamed.
So I just want to put that out there. That's not a warning. That's not a threat. That's just ultimately 100% facts. Until next time, I'm Mark Monroe.
Tevo, Come Up cousin correspondent, not a mentor.
Every time you say that, it's funny. And I'm Jolyn GC, and the place to be, staying far, far away from a stock called GME.
Ooh, I like that.
And I'm not a rapper. And this has been your Come Up. We'll see you next week. Until next time, peace.